Hello, folks. Welcome to Holding On with Holder, where I talk to interesting people about interesting topics. My name is Steve Holder, and I am your host. My guest tonight is Robert Gonzalez, who recently published his first book. It's a book of poems called Eagle's Claws for Freedom's Cause. Welcome, Robert.
Hello, Steve. How are you?
I'm just fine. Glad to have you with me tonight.
Well, glad to be here.
So tell us about you, your background. Who are you?
Well, I grew up in Pennsylvania, in the mountains of northeastern Pennsylvania, and I emigrated to Florida, I would say probably 25 years ago or so. And I love it here, especially in the winter months.
Yeah, yeah. I guess a lot of people move to Florida just for the weather.
Yeah, nowadays they're moving here too because we don't have to wear masks as much as they do in some other places.
Okay. Yeah, they're starting to ease up here in Tennessee also.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
That's a good thing.
yeah.
So let's get started talking about your book. And my first question is, who is Deanna Lorraine and why was she the topic of your book?
Well, she ran for office in San Francisco, challenging Nancy Pelosi, who, in her opinion and in the opinion of many of us, really needed to be replaced in Congress. She took it upon herself to run, and she ran a spirited campaign. She didn't have much help from the organizations of her own party, but she was kind of like an outsider, an insurgent candidate. And I got interested and I got involved and I got to chatting with her online, and I started writing stories and poems about the campaign. And after I had a few poems, I said, you know what, maybe I should just make these into a book. And she was all for it. And that's pretty much how the book came about. It took about a year to write all the poems.
Okay. Now, is she a QAnon follower?
I believe she is. I'm not 100% sure, but I think she is.
Yeah. Are you a QAnon follower?
I read the stuff, and I kind of like I'm not a hardcore QAnon follower. I think there might be something to it. From what I hear, it's a military intelligence operation, so only a few people really know about it for sure. But I mean, I don't discount it either. I do give it some credence.
So you have written a book of poetry. Do you consider yourself a poet?
You know, I I had a college professor once tell me that I wrote really well, but I've never written poetry. I don't even know how or why I started doing the poems, but one day they just started coming out, and I just kept going with them. And from what people tell me, they're pretty clever, and they like them. I tried to make them as entertaining as possible.
Yeah, well, that's good. Now, you are very conservative, correct?
I'm very conservative, yeah.
Okay. And how does your personal experience affect your politics?
Well, my family, my father, my grandfather, grandmother, aunts, cousins, all had to leave Cuba, in the early 60s from the communist takeover there. So I know what it's like. I know, there's stories that they tell me from an early age really sunk in, and I just understand the evils of communism. And you could just see human nature. You could see people gravitating towards it, and you could see it coming. If you've experienced it once, it's something that will never leave you.
Yeah.
So that's how I got to be so conservative. And I love the era of President Reagan, and I love the era of President Trump, and I'd love it if he could come back.
Okay. So how old were you when you first started writing?
How old was I?
Yeah.
Well, I started, well, I'll tell you a little funny story. When I was in grade school, I think it was probably like 7th or 8th grade, I wrote a paper. The teacher asked us to write an autobiography. So the first line that I wrote was, "My life started when I was born." She
That
wrote me
makes
back.
sense.
Yeah, she said, "Most lives do."
Yeah.
So that's where it all started.
Yeah, that was kind of an early age to write your autobiography, huh?
Yeah. But I wrote a paper in college, like I said, and one of the professors really liked it. And he called me aside and he told me, you write really well. I just wanted to tell you that. And I thanked him. And then years later, I came along this and I did it, and it's out there published now.
Good deal. Good deal. So was you born in Cuba?
No, I was born in New York City.
Okay. How did you end up in Cuba?
I did it. My parents and my grandparents, they left Cuba. They came to the United States in the 60s.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, yeah. So I grew up in Pennsylvania and then I came down to Florida.
Yeah. So why do you think you're a conservative? You know, some people are conservative, some are liberal. Why do you think you happen to be a conservative?
Because I think that humans are born free, and I think conservatism makes people free, and freedom makes people conservative. I think when you're liberal, it's nice to feel compassion towards other human beings, and I think most conservatives do. You know, it's that same old saying. You know, you teach a man to fish. You know, you've taught him for life. You give a man to fish, he's going to want another fish. So that's pretty much the philosophy that I try to that I believe in.
Well, isn't it good if you can do both? Give him fish for today and teach him to fish for the rest of his
Well,
life.
I guess if you could do both, that might even be better, maybe.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah. Mm.
you said you did vote for Trump.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So what was it about him that made you want to vote for him?
Well, I think he's the only one fighting for the people. Who ran for president. Um, I think he's on the people's side and he's not on the politician side. I think there's a lot of politicians in there that are only in it for themselves and have taken their eye off the ball from we the people.
You know, a lot of us believe that Donald Trump is just in it for himself.
Is a what?
Said a lot of us believe Donald Trump was only in it for himself.
A lot of people believe that. I don't. I mean, who would put themselves through all that he's put himself through, to be in it for himself? And he put his family and himself through that grinder. I don't, I don't think that's not my view.
They kind of made a few $1 billion in the process.
Well, he had that before he was president. He didn't need that job. And actually, numbers will tell you he lost money while he was president.
Hmm. Well, that's another debate for another day. And you said you'd vote for him again?
Yeah, I mean, depending on who, if somebody else was just as good, I might vote for them. But if he was running on the Republican ticket, I would definitely vote for him. Yeah.
So what other Republicans do you think would be good?
Well, right now Ron DeSantis would be pretty good, and Mike Flynn, Mike Pompeo. I always like Mike Huckabee. There's 3 Mikes in a row. um, any of those guys would do well for me.
Yeah. What do you think about feminism?
Feminism, I think it's a liberal philosophy where men and women are equal but different. They try to make them equal but equal. So I think females have their role and males have their role. One is not better than the other, just different. I think that's how our Creator created us.
Yeah. So what do you think is a role of a man and what is the role of a woman?
These are really in-depth questions. I'm enjoying this, Steve. Thanks. Well, a man as a woman a role of a man is to be, a provider for his family, to give compassion to his family, to the welfare of his wife and his kids. And wife can do the same thing, but she has other roles that she can do too. She could be supportive in other ways. They have different intuitions, different ways that they function than we do in child rearing and in supporting their husbands and vice versa and that sort of thing.
Yeah. What do you think about abortion?
I'm against it. I think it's you're taking an innocent life who has, before they've had a chance to live.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you on that.
Okay.
So what kind of a childhood did you have? Did you have a good childhood? Were you raised in a conservative home?
Yeah. Like I said, my family had to leave Cuba, so they pretty much knew, you don't get any more, up close and personal with liberalism, communism until you've lived it like they did. So, yeah, it was a pretty conservative household, not ultra conservative, but yeah, I mean, we work like everybody else. We go to school. We live our lives happily, and we try to help other people who need help. That kind of thing.
Yeah. So would you say you had a good childhood?
Yeah, yeah. I played sports, I did fishing and hunting.
Yeah. So what has been your biggest challenge in life so far?
Challenge in life. Well, like everybody, just the everyday grind of life is not easy on anyone. You just got to put one foot in front of the other every day and try to do the best you can and hope for the best.
Yeah. So what would you say is your biggest accomplishment so far?
Well, the book was a pretty good accomplishment, I think, right?
Well,
It's
there you go. There you
yeah, yeah. If you had asked me even at 2 years ago if I would have ever written a book, I would have told you, nah, that would never do something like that.
go. Yeah, I know that feeling too. Um, so how big a role do you think confidence plays in writing a book?
Confidence, oh, a lot. I have read stories of like Edgar Allan Poe and some of these other authors who they're driven by anger and they're driven by sadness and things like that. I like to write happy. I like to be upbeat. I like to be in a good mood. And when I was writing this book and some of the stuff I was coming up with, I was enjoying laughing. I loved it. I
Yeah.
don't know how these guys can drink a bottle of whiskey and write. I couldn't do that.
That sounds like Ernest Hemingway. He pretty much lived like that, I think.
I know. I've read a few. I love Old Man in the Sea, and his work is I like his work. An interesting way of phrasing things.
Yeah, he came to a bad ending though.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
So how do you shut off that inner critic that tells you that you can't write and you can't do nothing right? You know how that goes.
Yeah, I have some support. I have, relatives who help me out, and every time I'm feeling like my stuff's not good enough, I ask them what they think, and they'll usually give me an honest answer. Most of the time, they'll tell me it's pretty good. And then I have other friends too that I ask, and they tell me the same thing. And actually, the Deanna, I asked her, I would write her these poems before I sent them out, and she would, give me feedback saying how good they were and how clever they were. So that helped a lot too.
Yeah. You think sometimes people self-sabotage on things they're trying to do?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, and I try to fight against that.
Yeah.
Maybe in certain ways we all might have that tendency, but I always fight against that.
Yeah. I think maybe fear is probably the biggest obstacle all of us have to face.
Yeah, it sure is.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um, did you ever ask for any help in writing the book? Did you reach out to any authors or anybody or do any research on writing or anything like
No,
that?
not really. I did research writing. I read other works like this, kind of see what was. I read Hemingway again. I would read a little Edgar Allan Poe and some of these other poets.
Yeah.
And I also actually looked at rock and roll songs, and I saw how they were composed. And I thought, well, I could do that. In fact, some of the poems in the book I wrote with the song in mind.
Yeah. But didn't Bob Dylan win some kind of a poetic award recently or something?
Oh, he's been around that for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, if I never studied the in-depth writing of some of these words in the popular music, but they are very clever in their structure.
Well, a lot of them you can't understand the words anyway.
Some you can't. Yeah, yeah.
So do you think asking for help in anything is a sign of weakness or a sign of wisdom and courage?
Oh, wisdom and courage. Yeah, everybody needs help from time to time.
Yeah.
I think that's how we're wired.
Yeah, if you don't want to ask for help when you need it, I think that's kind of a sign of a big ego that needs to be adjusted.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Do you yourself to others a lot? Is that something you have to struggle with?
Well, I compare my work to other works, just to see how it's measuring up. And, that's pretty much, I don't compare myself personally to anyone else, but as far as the work goes, yeah.
Yeah. So how do you define success?
Success is doing the best job that you're personally capable of doing. If you put it all out there and leave nothing on the table, nothing to chance, that's success, whether the book sells or doesn't sell, or whether you fall flat on your face or not. As long as you did your best, that's all that you can ask for.
Yeah. So are you planning on writing another book?
maybe in the future I'd like to write a book, but this time about maybe hunting and fishing stories,
Okay.
that kind of thing.
So do you think you're going to write for yourself or write to sell? Or how did you do it this time? Did you write to please you or did you write to sell?
Oh, I wrote to please myself, hoping it would sell.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll probably approach the second one in the same way. I'll try to make the stories as interesting as I can for the reader.
Yeah. So what do you usually hunt when you hunt?
Well, in Pennsylvania, I used to hunt for deer a lot.
Okay.
Haven't hunted that much in Florida, but I fish a lot in Florida. Go offshore fishing for groupers and snappers and dolphin, wahoo, that kind of thing.
I cleaned some groupers once when I was a teenager, and that was not a fun job.
No, you know, they can get pretty dirty when you bring them back in.
Pretty smelly.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to people who are considering writing their first book?
Just go for it. You know, don't let the critics or anybody else who might hold you back from doing it you know, just go at it full speed, full steam ahead.
Yeah. How many times have you heard people say, well, I'm going to write a book, I just can't get around to it?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah.
Everybody seems to think they can write a book.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to tell us about you or your book that I haven't given you an opportunity to say?
Sure. Would you like to hear one of the poems?
Sure.
Well, actually, sure.
Yeah.
I'll read you two of the poems. The first one was my most recent one. It was written about Earth Day because we just had Earth Day here recently.
Yeah.
Let me get that one. Okay. You know, I have always felt I wrote this in response to, I think liberalism or liberals have always trying to take the upper hand in being conservationist towards the land because they don't want to hunt or fish or do any of these things. They have they want to protect everything, which is good. I mean, conservation is good, but I wrote this in response to that. So here goes. I said, Earth Day belongs more to conservatives than it does liberals. The word conservative says it all in its first syllable. Being good stewards of us is what's been asked by our Creator, the Earth's bountiful generator. Fishing and poetry go hand in hand, one written deep in the depths of the wet ocean water, far from the beach's sand, the other one on the shore of solid-footed dry land. The best months being April through June, so make sure to book your trip soon. This wahoo was caught a little after noon. Sometimes they can be caught under the sky of a big blue moon. You can usually find them best in the early morning light where the bait fish congregate. If you don't arrive on time, it will probably be too late. So if you want to catch the big one, set your alarm clock early. No need to hesitate. Bon appetito, they are great with a little lemon on the dish. Wahoo are as fun to catch as they are to taste for us conservatives who love to fish.
Okay. Now you want to read one about Lorraine?
Yeah, let me read one of hers. I did a Christmas one. Well, all right, this one is called Deanna in Atlanta. Okay. You're close by, you're over there in Tennessee, so there's a lot of, okay. In 1864, in his famous March to the Sea, which began in Atlanta, Union General Tecumseh Sherman promised to make Georgia howl. Today, there is a new general in town, Deanna Lorraine of InfoWars fame, looking to make Georgia's election fraudsters throw in the towel. Deanna will be in Atlanta to squelch the storm that will make dirty politicians squeal if they refuse to conform. They would be better off trying to make a deal before she forces them to stop the steal. General Lorraine marches in with nothing but her stars and stripes, but anyone who knows her knows she will make the scammers run with fright. In Georgia, it's peaches with cobbler and cream that helps in finding ballots unseen. And just like Sherman's March to the Sea, Georgia will howl from Atlanta to Savannah, all because Deanna was in Atlanta. There.
Very poetic.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. There's 24 poems in there. That's one of the 24.
Okay. I can't help but notice when you say the word liberal, you say it like it's a bad thing.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Well.
Well, I don't think it's a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a website?
Yeah, it's for the www.eagleclaws by robertgonzalez.com.
Okay. Okay. And your book is available where?
It's available there. It's available on Amazon, and it's also available at xlibris.com.
Okay.
And I'll put it up here to the camera. It's Eagle Claws for Freedom's Cause.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, anything else you want to add, Bob?
Well, that's pretty much it, unless you want to hear another poem.
If you want to read another one, that's fine.
All right. And maybe a
Now
fishing
read us
story.
one more anyway.
One more? Okay. Okay, let me see here. All right. All right. All right, I'll do the first one. I think that was just. All right. Well, this one is called Indiana. I was playing with her name Deanna and called it Indiana, like the state.
Okay.
Okay. So, Indiana, there is something to see. Indiana, the land of basketball and sycamore trees. Indiana lies Midwestern values that belie her California roots. Indiana lies rugged individualism, which she proudly wears on her newly minted cowboy boots. Indiana, you can find your piece of Americana, whether it be a house or a cabana. Indiana lies a share of the American dream. Indiana, there is no in between. Indiana lies an outgoing personality for all to see. Indiana lies her values of family, God, and country. Indiana is pretty on the surface and easy to look at, but her real beauty lies on the inside. Imagine that. Indiana lies a force for good, in spite of all the slings and arrows she has withstood. Indiana lies a real tesorero, that's treasure for our non-European friends to appreciate. Indiana lies America's favorite state.
Okay. I looked at her website today. I'd never heard of her before, but I knew you had written about her, so I looked at her website. She's an attractive young lady.
She is. She's very interesting, and she's very different, and she's not afraid to take the bull by the horns. That's kind of why I was attracted to her and her campaign.
So have you met her in person?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay. I bet you want to, though.
It would be nice. I don't know if it will happen, but that's okay.
Okay. Well, Robert, I appreciate you being my guest. I know you and me will never agree on politics, but I like you just the same. You sound like a good fellow.
Oh, thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. And thanks for having me on. And if you'd like to have me on again, I'd love to do it.
Well, I just may do that. Folks, thanks for joining in to Holding On with Holder. Please subscribe to my channel and feel free to share this video all over social media, and be sure to read Eagle Claws for Freedom's Cause. Robert, thanks again, brother, and I'll let you go, and you have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, Steve. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.